personal ranking for me. But let me know what your rankings of the DCU movies are in the comments below. Right, moving on away from all of that, and I think that's enough lists for now. The thing I wanted to talk about was Walter Hamada. And Walter Hamada did a recent interview with the New York Times. And in that interview, he said a lot of stuff. So one of the first things he said was that they're going to be releasing 4 movies a year, 2 of which are going to be put onto HBO Max. And that's cool. Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good idea. And it seems to mean that we're going to get a lot of movies coming our way very soon. But he also said things like, he basically used the word cul-de-sac, talking about Zack Snyder's Josstice League and his kind of DC universe thing, and said that there's not really going to be anything beyond Zack Snyder's Josstice League in that realm, which is kind of unusual to say considering we've got Wonder Woman 3 coming out. But to me, reading that article, it really did sound like an anti kind of... It sounded like a bit of a cry for help. And James Simon, another writer who's been helping me out a lot recently, did a really good article, which I think you should read. I'll put it up here. All about Walter Hamada out of Warner Brothers Pictures and DC Films, ? So in this article, he goes into what's been going on at DC Films and Warner Media. So Walter Hamada is the kind of overseer at DC Films, and this kind of then stems from, I'll bring it up here, this tweet that Ray Fisher put out there when he said, Walter Hamada is the most dangerous kind of enabler. His lies and Warner Brothers PR's failed September 4th hit piece sought to undermine the very real issues of the Josstice League investigation. I will not participate in any production associated with him. Accountability larger than entertainment. So that is a massive statement. And of course, he made this statement right after the Warner Brothers, right after the New York Times article was released. And it makes me think, what is going on at DC Films? It's really a bit of a mess. And I'll take this off. But yeah, again, do go and check that article out. You can find it on the site. You can. I tweeted it out, and it's also on Facebook. But Warner Brothers have made some really odd decisions recently. So of course they fired Johnny Depp from Fantastic Beasts 3, which a lot of people are really upset with. There's the whole Amber Heard thing going on, which they're keeping her on and looking as though they're going to keep her on in Aquaman 2. And then there's Zack Snyder's Josstice League. And it was said by Zack Snyder himself that he was asked by Toby Emmerich to make that film, to whether he could actually get his cut of Josstice League out there. It wasn't Walter Hamada's decision. And Walter Hamada comes from... I think he's a very good producer. I think he's had some really good films made under his watch. I spoke earlier about the Conjuring films. They were produced by him. And he did a lot of movies with James Wan, which is probably one of the reasons why Walter Hamada is now a big cheese over at DC Films. But I always saw Walter Hamada as a stopgap, so someone to come in to kind of stop the hemorrhaging that was going on at DC Films and Warner Brothers, particularly DC Films, which is why he's like the overseer. So he's not actually the head of DC Films. And I wonder whether that article, because there are actually a very few quotes from him. He does in that article say that they're going to be looking at making 2 Batman separate franchises. They have Robert Pattinson's Batman and a new Batman as well, and a new bunch of films that won't be Ben Affleck. And it just seems to me like it's just throwing so much out there with no real vision. And that, again, him coming out and saying, we've got 4 films coming out every year. It's like, you think, really? Really? Is that really what people need? And also, he didn't specify whether they were live action films or animated films. So there could very well be 2 live action films coming out every year and 2 animated films. But he did specifically, like, the article, not him, did specifically name, I think it was the Static Shock film and the Batgirl films as one that could come direct to streaming, basically, to HBO Max. that it's just Warner Brothers and DC films are in such a weird place, especially although now they've literally just revealed that Wonder Woman 3 is going to happen. They're bringing Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins back. They wanted to make that very, very clear very early on. They did that after the film was basically certified fresh by Rotten Tomatoes. And then now you look at the percentage now on the critics score, and it's much, much lower than it was before. It's no longer certified fresh. So I think they really jumped the gun on that one. And I mean, I love Patty Jenkins, and I love to see. And I'm not putting the blame specifically on Walter Hamada, but the tweet from Ray Fisher makes me think that there are issues with him, with the hierarchy at Warner Brothers, and it's very, very dangerous. And fans are starting to notice. And again, the headline of this article is, is Walter Hamada out of Warner Brothers Pictures and DC Films? I don't think they'll get rid of him anytime soon. I think he'll probably be in there until at least 2022 in that position, because there are some films that he wants to make sure he gets to oversee, which he's been working on. But it does feel to me like there's no real direction at Warner Brothers. There's no plan. And I know it's probably not fair to do this, but you cannot but compare what's happening at DC Films to what Marvel Studios did. Marvel Studios had a vision. I mean, I'm not even saying they need someone like Kevin Feige. What I'm saying is they need to sort out their plan. They need to sit down with everyone and be like, okay, what are we working on? What are we dropping? And there doesn't seem to be that. Even if they kind of go, which I actually hope they do, if they say, look, we're not doing the interconnected thing anymore. We're just going to focus on making as many good movies as we can, or we're just focusing on making good movies. Maybe not. It's not, saying we're going to release 4 films a year is not, as a DC, I'm a DC Comics fan, as I actually like a lot of the DCEU films. I love DC. I'm a DC guy. If you look at the comics behind me, the majority of those are DC comics. And I used to have a lot more, and I got rid of them because I was moving. But carrying around comic books is heavy. But it's just upsetting. It's like I want them to focus on making, let's say, focus on making fewer films, but just focus on making them better. It does not matter how many movies you bring out. And I get the feeling that this is what Walter Hamada's thinking is, let's just get as many films out as possible and hope that there is maybe one might be good out of 4. And that's not enough. If you're making 4 movies a year, 4 of those, each film has to be brilliant, really. It has to be like 8 out of 10s. You can't end up with a Wonder Woman 1984, which is basically a 6 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned. And that actually basically be your only movie that comes out this year. They had so much time. Anyway, I'm gonna talk about that later. But I do think Walter Hamada is in a difficult position. I think Ray Fisher's tweet doesn't make it any easier for him, because it kind of it made me think, there might be some issues going on at Warner Brothers and DC Films. There was the investigation into Warner Media that actually Ray Fisher got basically happened because of him, and they came out and said that they made they did everything they needed to do, and they kind of fixed the problem. But as far as Ray Fisher's concerned, no, the problem's not fixed. There are still people there at Warner Brothers that are problematic. He spoke about Toby Emmerich in the Forbes article, who's basically the head of Warner Brothers now, and saying that he's a problem. And now he's saying Walter Hamada is also a problem. So I suppose what I'm getting at is Warner Brothers needs a big shakeup. They need to have, basically, I'm talking about fewer. They need fewer people involved at the very top. They've got too many. I know there's a really good video done by Grace Randolph where she went over all the she went over the Warner Brothers hierarchy, and it's just mad. It's insane. There are so many different people involved, and it's just got worse since AT&T is they now basically own Warner Media. I think they do own Warner Media, and it's just got worse because they've got more people involved. It's too many people. It is the corporate world, but unfortunately, if you're going to be making these movies as good as they possibly can be, and if you really want them to keep on happening, then they need to sort their act out. They need to sort themselves out. They need to clean house. They need to think outside. Like, they need to think out, not just outside the box. I'm talking in cliches, but they really need to look at who they can bring in that will steady the ship, who they can bring in that will actually help these movies become better in the long run, because they really desperately need to be better. And the whole thing with Wonder Woman 84, I was really hoping that film was going to be the best DC Comics movie ever made, but it was not. It had every opportunity to be, but it was not. And why is that? Is that Patty Jenkins' fault? Patty Jenkins' fault? I don't think so. I don't think it's her fault. I do wonder whether someone at Warner Brothers, maybe even a Jeff Johns who was involved in writing the film, or someone higher up, someone like Walter Hamada, got into her ear and freaked her out and got her to change the movie. Because Patty Jenkins is a much better director than what we got. She should have made a much better film, and I'm not very confident at the moment with what's happening at Warner Brothers, just in general. But it worries me as a DC Comics fan. But let me know what you guys think about that. That was a very long discussion about all of that, and I'd love to know